Some theories don't just ask questions, they melt the very fabric of the answers. They don't try to explain the world as it is, but instead unravel the scaffolding that holds your reality together. What if everything you see is only there because you believe it is? What if time doesn't pass? You do. What if your thoughts aren't really yours, but echoes bouncing through a mindless universe? These aren't just ideas to entertain at 2 a.m. They're traps disguised as insight, doors that don't open but still pull you through. In the next 2 hours, we'll explore 25 brand new paradoxes and theories, each carefully crafted to make your perception glitch, pause, and question itself. Some of them may never leave you. Others will only make sense when you stop trying to understand them. So, lie back, let your guard down, and prepare to walk the edge between sense and something much stranger. Imagine a mirror that doesn't wait for you, one that doesn't passively reflect your image when you step in front of it, but one that already holds your reflection before you arrive, before you even decide to look. It reflects your intent, not your presence, your gaze, not your body. And this isn't a metaphor, it's a theoretical framework for how reality might actually work. Think about this. When you look into a normal mirror, you expect it to show you what is. But what if your perception of yourself in that moment, the posture you expect, the mood you're in, even the way your hair falls, is subtly altered by what you think you'll see? The moment you anticipate your reflection, the brain already constructs an image, not because the mirror shows it, but because you believe it will. So who is doing the reflecting, the glass, or your mind? Now twist that idea further. What if the mirror is never showing you in real time, but always a split second before, a projection of who you believe you are rather than who you actually are? Neuroscience already shows us that our brains register events with a slight delay, compensating for it by predicting outcomes to make the world feel seamless. Your sense of now is already a well-orchestrated illusion. So if your brain is buffering reality, then your reflection, your sense of self, might be based more on prediction than perception. This opens the door to a more disturbing possibility, that every time you see yourself, you are seeing a version of you that doesn't exist, a preloaded idea of yourself rendered based on expectations, emotions, and subconscious biases. It's not a reflection, it's a ghost generated by anticipation. And here's where things fracture even deeper. What if this phenomenon applies not just to mirrors, but to other people? What if every time someone looks at you, they're not seeing you, but the reflection they've prepared in advance? A mirrored self, not based on your actions, but their predictions of your actions. We think we walk through life as one unified identity, but maybe we're a collage of pre-reflections, snapshots imagined by others, over and over again. In this theory, you never truly arrive anywhere. You're always slightly behind the version of you that others have already perceived. Just like the mirror that reflects before you look, society sees a version of you before you even act. And yet, here's the twist. What if you are the mirror? What if your thoughts, opinions, identity, even your sense of being, aren't yours at all, but reflections of everything around you? What you believe you are may simply be what others have convinced you to see. You don't have a reflection, you are one. Let that settle. If everything you perceive is shaped by expectation, yours or someone else's, then where is the original self? Is there even such a thing? Or are we all just mirrors, endlessly bouncing distorted light between one another, chasing a version of ourselves that never existed in the first place? In quantum mechanics, there's a strange principle. Observation changes the observed. Particles behave differently when measured. Reality doesn't choose a state until it's being watched. If you are both the observer and the observed, what does that make your reflection? It's not a philosophical riddle, it's a feedback loop. You reflect what you expect to see, then you believe what you've reflected, then you act according to that belief, then others observe, and their perception bounces back to you, reinforcing the original illusion. It loops forever. And so, the paradox. If every reflection comes before the moment, and every identity is just a mirror of mirrors, then when, if ever, do you truly arrive in your own life? Or is you always one step behind the reflection, chasing something that never quite existed in the first place? Subscribe if that question left a crack in your perception, because this is only the beginning. You wake up, brush your teeth, make your coffee. The cup is exactly where you left it. The walls haven't moved. Gravity is reliable. The world, you assume, stays still when you're not looking. But what if that's just part of the illusion? What if reality is not only changeable, but constantly rewriting itself, editing past, present, and even the rules you use to define it? Imagine reality as a document. Every moment is a paragraph, and your mind is the cursor. You believe the previous sentences, the memories, are fixed. But what if they're not? What if each time you look back, reality quietly rewrites a detail or two? Just enough that you wouldn't notice, but enough to subtly shape your perception of the present. There are theories in cognitive science that suggest memory isn't a retrieval process, it's a reconstruction. You don't pull memories from a vault. You rebuild them in the moment, influenced by emotions, current beliefs, and even suggestions from others. The past you remember is not the past that was. It's the past that makes your present make sense. Now stretch this idea beyond the mind. Imagine the universe behaves similarly, not as a fixed record, but a self-editing narrative. The laws of physics, maybe they've changed, just slightly, just recently. But you wouldn't notice, because your brain and your history have been updated to match the latest version. It's like a software patch applied mid-simulation. You continue operating normally, unaware that the ground beneath you has shifted. Every rule, every law, every memory, recalibrated in sync so there's no visible break in continuity, a seamless edit. This theory becomes more disturbing when you consider quantum uncertainty. The famous double-slit experiment tells us that particles exist in a state of probability until observed. But what if that principle scales up, not just to particles, but to reality itself? Unobserved moments might be indeterminate, fluid, waiting to be collapsed into a version that aligns with your evolving narrative. Which brings us to the question, who's doing the editing? Is it you? Your subconscious, shaping the world in a way that reinforces your beliefs? Is it collective consciousness? Or is there something deeper, a system, a mechanism, rewriting existence like a story that constantly rewrites its own plot to keep itself coherent? And here's the darkest angle of all. What if some edits go wrong? You walk into a room and feel strange, like something is off. The colors seem slightly wrong. You're sure that chair was on the left yesterday, not the right. You shake it off, memory lapse maybe. But what if that moment is a glitch in the edit, a corner of reality that didn't stitch itself back together properly? Some people call these Mandela effects, shared false memories that defy logic. But if this paradox holds weight, those aren't mistakes in memory. They're moments when the edit wasn't clean enough, where you almost noticed reality shifting under your feet. This leads to a final, impossible question. If reality edits itself, then what was the original version? Was there ever one? Or are we caught in a loop of endless rewrites? each version overwriting the last, leaving no trace but the lingering feeling that something used to be different. If that feeling has ever haunted you, consider this. Maybe it wasn't your mind that changed. Maybe it was the world itself. You are conscious. You're aware of your thoughts, your body, your place in the world. You can reflect, reason, and recognize yourself in a mirror. But what if all of that is just an illusion? What if what you call self-awareness is nothing more than a convincing hallucination? An echo generated by a mind that doesn't actually know itself. Think of it like this. A flame doesn't know it's burning. A storm doesn't know it's moving. They simply are. What if your mind is the same? Something unfolding, but not truly observing itself in the way you think. The feeling of being aware of being you might be a clever trick your brain plays to make sense of all the noise. Neuroscience already struggles to locate the self in the brain. There's no central place where you sit, watching the world go by. Instead, there are countless modules processing emotions, language, perception, memory, and somehow their output gets bundled into what feels like a single continuous stream. But that stream is stitched together after the fact, milliseconds at a time. Your sense of being you might be a post-production effect, like a narrator telling the story after it already happened. Now consider this. If you were truly self-aware, wouldn't you be able to control your thoughts? Yet thoughts arise uninvited. Emotions flood you without warning. Ideas pop into your head, fully formed. You observe them, yes, but you do not create them consciously. They appear. And then, like an afterthought, you claim ownership. This illusion of authorship is subtle but powerful. You think, therefore you are. But what if the thought came before the thinker? What if the I in your sentence is just a placeholder, an illusion generated to give shape to an internal narrative you never truly wrote? The self-awareness. Illusion becomes even more unsettling when you realize it's recursive. You're not aware of yourself. You're aware of an idea of yourself, a mental model, but that model is constantly changing based on memory, mood, and moment. So which version is real? And if none are permanent, can you even say there's a real you at all? Let's go deeper. Imagine you had a perfect clone, identical in every way, right down to your memories, habits, and preferences. At the moment of duplication, you both believe you are the real you. But from that moment on, your experiences diverge, and so do your identities. If self-awareness is tied to memory and perception, then the illusion of a singular self collapses the second it's duplicated, which means it was never real to begin with. You might feel that there's a center behind your eyes, a place where you reside. But that's a sensation, an impression. Just like a phantom limb, your sense of self might be something your brain conjures up because it needs a central character to narrate experience. The alternative, that there's no real you in the driver's seat, is far too disorienting. But disorienting doesn't mean false. This paradox isn't meant to strip away your identity. It's meant to question how it formed. If your awareness is a story your brain tells itself, then maybe true self-awareness isn't knowing who you are, but knowing that you don't. There's a kind of silence that isn't empty. It doesn't whisper, it screams. Not with sound, but with the weight of everything that's left unsaid. It's the silence after an argument, when the air crackles with words that weren't spoken. The silence in a room once filled with laughter. The silence inside your own mind when you ask yourself a question too big to answer. And here's the paradox. What if the loudest truths in existence aren't spoken aloud, but live inside silence itself? Think about this. Most of your thoughts are just noise. Internal dialogue trying to label, categorize, control. But beneath that noise, there's a space, a blank. And when you stare into it long enough, it begins to stare back. This is where silence gets strange. In meditation, seekers try to reach this space, not to escape thought, but to witness what's beneath it. And often, in those moments of deep stillness, something terrifying happens. You realize there may not be a you behind the thoughts, that the voice narrating your life isn't actually you, but just a script, a reflex. And when that voice goes quiet, you're left with nothing. But here's the twist. Within that nothingness, you begin to sense everything. Some describe it as oneness, others call it God, the void, the source. But language fails here because this paradox can't be described, it can only be experienced. Silence becomes a mirror so pure that all illusion falls away. And when it does, what remains is not absence, but an overwhelming presence. A kind of truth so vast, so absolute, that it can't be contained in words. And maybe that's why we fear silence. Because silence doesn't just strip away distraction, it strips away identity. In the absence of noise, we're forced to confront questions we spend our whole lives avoiding. Who am I beneath all my roles? What remains when I stop performing? What if the person I think I am is just a voice that can go quiet at any time? Even in nature, silence is powerful. A forest at night, still and undisturbed, feels sacred. But it can also feel unnerving, like something is watching. Why? Because silence heightens awareness. It brings the unconscious to the surface. In the quiet, we hear the hum of the universe, and it doesn't always comfort us. Now think about the silence between people. A friend doesn't reply. A loved one falls quiet. A crowd listens, not speaking, waiting for something. That silence says more than words ever could. It holds emotion, memory, meaning, all without form. And here lies the paradox. Silence is the absence of sound, but not the absence of meaning. It can be louder than any scream, deeper than any speech, more revealing than any confession. In fact, some truths can only exist in silence, because the moment you try to describe them, they dissolve. Like a dream you can't quite retell. Like love that can't be captured in a sentence. Some things are too vast for language, too raw for definition. So here's the question I want to ask you tonight. Not just to ponder, but to feel, where are you listening from right now? What time is it where you are? And in this moment of shared silence, between the words, behind the voice, what do you feel? The paradox is that silence is empty, yet it holds the most honest answers. You just have to be still enough to hear them. Time is supposed to flow, from past to present to future, linear, measurable, reliable. Seconds become minutes, minutes become hours, and the world ticks forward with each passing beat. But what if that flow is a trick of perception? What if time, as you experience it, doesn't actually move and never has? You see, the paradox of time isn't about clocks or calendars. It's about your experience of now. You are always in the present moment. You've never actually been in the past, nor have you ever stood in the future. When you remember, it happens now. When you imagine, it happens now. Time, for you, stretches infinitely, but only within the single, strange space of the present. So, where is time really? Physicists have long known that time isn't as rigid as it seems. Einstein showed us that time bends and warps with gravity, and that simultaneity is relative. What's happening now for you might not be happening now for someone else moving at a different speed or standing in a different part of the universe. There is no universal now. That alone should shatter everything you think you know. But let's look deeper. When you recall a memory, your brain reactivates the original neural pattern as if the event were happening again. Not a replay, but a reconstruction. The past isn't something you visit. It's something you rebuild. And the future, it's a projection, a guess. The only place where time truly exists for you is in your current perception. Which means the past and future are phantoms, fabrications designed to give context to the eternal present. So what happens if you remove that context? If there is no before and no after, what's left? A loop, a still point, a kind of psychological freefall where the mind reaches for direction and finds none. This is where the paradox grips tight. The more you try to define time, the more it unravels. Because the very act of observing time requires memory. Without memory, every moment would be new, disconnected, unanchored. And yet memory itself is unreliable, malleable, emotional, incomplete. So the foundation of your timeline may be built on sand. But here's the truly unsettling thought. What if all of time already exists? What if every moment, your birth, your final breath, this exact second, are all suspended in space-time, like pages in a book, already written? You're not moving through time. You're experiencing individual frames of a vast, unmoving reel. And your mind, like a projector, plays one frame at a time, creating the illusion of motion. The present becomes not a fleeting moment, but a spotlight, illuminating one fixed part of a story that has already been told. In this view, there is no beginning, no end, just a tapestry of nows, and your consciousness skating across them like a needle on a record. The time that stretches to nowhere isn't broken. It never moved to begin with. And yet, somehow, here you are, caught in the illusion, watching the hands tick forward, feeling yourself age, mourning what was, anticipating what might be, all while standing absolutely still in an eternal now. So next time you look at the clock, ask yourself, is time really moving forward? Or are you simply remembering that it used to? You sit in silence, eyes closed, no distractions, no noise, just you. And then a thought appears, maybe a memory, a song lyric, an embarrassing moment from 10 years ago. You didn't ask for it. You didn't summon it. It just arrived, uninvited. This is the paradox of the mind that thinks without permission. You believe you are the thinker. You believe you're in control. But if that's true, then why can't you stop thinking? Why can't you decide when thoughts come, what they say, or how long they stay? The mind is a machine, constantly generating, filtering, reprocessing. It takes everything, sensory input, internal chatter, feelings, and spits out a stream of consciousness. But here's the twist. Most of that stream is noise, static. It loops, it repeats, it hijacks your attention with anxieties and impulses, and convinces you that you are the one behind it. But you're not. You're watching it happen. You're witnessing the thoughts, but you didn't create them, not consciously. The mind thinks the way the heart beats, automatically, involuntarily, and yet you identify with it. You say, "I am angry," when in reality, a thought of anger passed through your awareness. You say, "I am a failure," when in truth, that thought emerged without your permission, wrapped in fear, echoing from a past you didn't ask to inherit. So then, what is you, really? If thoughts appear on their own, if emotions flare without warning, if mental images arise without intent, then who or what is witnessing it all? This is where the paradox sharpens. The more you observe your thoughts, the more you realize you're not controlling them. And if you're not your thoughts and not your emotions, then what remains? A stillness, a watcher, a presence behind the noise. It has no name, no form, but it's there. It's always been there. You just forgot to notice it. Most people spend their lives inside the mind's stories. They live in rehearsed arguments. They replay trauma. They chase desires. But none of that is you. It's a theater projected onto your awareness. The mind, like a compulsive storyteller, never pauses, and you, the audience, mistake the story for the self. You can test this. Try sitting with no distractions for just 5 minutes. Watch every thought that arises. Don't judge them. Don't follow them. Just notice. You'll find that thoughts come without warning and leave without control. And some of them are not kind. Some are absurd. Some are dark. If you were your thoughts, you'd have to claim all of them. But you don't. Deep down, you know you didn't ask for them, and that's the truth most never dare to face. You are not your thoughts. You are not your mind. You are the space in which all of it appears. The mind thinks without permission because it was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be observed, like weather passing through the sky. You are not the storm. You are the sky. So next time, your mind spins stories. Ask yourself, did I choose this thought? Or did it choose me? And if you didn't choose it, maybe it's time to stop believing it. Reality feels solid. It feels stable. You assume that the moon hangs in the sky even when no one looks up. That the tree in your backyard still sways in the wind whether you're home or not. But what if that's not true? What if reality doesn't exist independently until something observes it? This is the paradox at the heart of quantum mechanics, and it's not science fiction. It's known, disturbingly, as the observer effect. At subatomic levels, particles don't have defined positions or velocities until they're measured. They exist in superposition, a hazy cloud of probabilities. It's only when you look, when you observe, that they snap into form. So let's go deeper. If an electron doesn't have a set state until it's observed, what was it before you looked? And more importantly, if no one ever looked at it, would it ever have had a state at all? Now stretch that idea out. Apply it not just to particles, but to everything. What if chairs, trees, planets, even people, only appear as real because something, somewhere, is watching? It's a terrifying implication, because it means that your presence is not just passive, it might be fundamental. Consciousness could be the engine that collapses the fog of probability into the world we see. Without it, the universe might remain in a silent, undefined state. No sound, no shape, no time, just potential. And yet, here's the twist. If consciousness creates reality by observing it, then who created you? If your own brain only forms through observable processes, but your consciousness is required to observe those processes, you're caught in a loop. A paradox where the observer and the observed depend on each other to exist. It's the cosmic version of a mirror reflecting itself. But it doesn't stop there. Philosophers have danced with this idea for centuries. long before quantum physics confirmed its eerie logic. Bishop Berkeley once proposed that to be is to be perceived. If no one sees a tree fall in the forest, it quite literally doesn't make a sound, or even fall, because the event only has meaning within the framework of perception. And now, modern science echoes that same haunting refrain. Experiments like the double-slit test show that particles behave differently when watched. Not metaphorically, literally. As if awareness bends the rules. As if the universe is hiding secrets until someone peeks. So what does that make you? A participant? A creator? A glitch in a reality that shouldn't exist until it's stared into? And what does it say about the world when you're asleep, or unconscious, or gone entirely? Does it vanish? Or does it persist because someone, somewhere, is still observing? You may think you're small, just one mind among billions. But this paradox whispers something stranger. Perhaps it's your observation that births the world. Perhaps all of this, light, color, motion, time, is only real because you noticed it. So when you close your eyes, what vanishes? And when you open them again, what exactly did you just bring into being? Have you ever sat alone in absolute quiet? No voices, no movement, no sound at all, only to hear something unmistakable. Not with your ears, but from somewhere deeper. A whisper behind your thoughts, a presence in the silence, a voice that isn't quite yours, and yet it speaks in the language of your soul. This is the paradox of the voice that speaks in total silence. In moments of stillness, when the noise of the world fades away, something else begins to emerge. Not thoughts in the usual sense, not chatter, not planning, but something quieter, wiser, as if there is a second self buried beneath the noise, patiently waiting for you to stop running. You might call it intuition. You might call it a gut feeling, inner guidance, a spiritual signal. But the truth is, it doesn't need a name. It's the voice that speaks when all others are silent. The one that doesn't argue, doesn't shout, it just knows. But here's the strange part. It only seems to exist in silence. If you try to listen for it while scrolling, rushing, distracting, it disappears. It hides behind the volume of everyday life. The more noise you bring in, the more this inner voice fades into static. So why is that? Maybe it's because this voice isn't added to your experience. It's what remains when everything else is stripped away. Like the sky behind the clouds, it's always been there. But clouds demand attention. Silence requires presence. And yet, there's something unnerving about this. Because if the deepest truths are only accessible in silence, then most people never hear them. Most people are too busy talking, thinking, reacting, to ever truly listen. And some might go their entire lives mistaking noise for knowledge and silence for emptiness. But silence isn't empty. It's full, overflowing. The paradox is that silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of something beyond it. A space where the self and the world momentarily dissolve into something more honest. A place where, if you dare to listen, you might hear the clearest message of all. You are not broken, you are just buried. Buried beneath expectations, roles, fears, thoughts. The voice in silence doesn't need to convince you, it simply reminds you that you were whole before the noise, that you still are. But how do you tell the difference between this inner voice and just more mental chatter? That's the trick. One voice demands answers, the other asks only that you feel the truth. One is urgent, the other is calm. One drags you into identity, history, and regret. The other invites you into stillness. And here's the most haunting twist of all. This silent voice might be the real you, not the version of you that's busy, stressed, or afraid, but the you that existed before you learned who to be, before language, before memory, before thought. A self that doesn't speak in words, but in presence. So next time you find yourself in quiet, don't rush to fill it. Wait, let the silence stretch, let it become uncomfortable, and then listen. You may just hear the truest thing you've ever known, spoken not aloud, but from the center of what you are. Stand before a mirror, look into it long enough, and something strange begins to happen. Not to the reflection, but to you. The longer you stare, the more your own face begins to feel unfamiliar, as if the image looking back isn't simply mimicking you, but studying you, knowing you, remembering you. This is the paradox of the mirror that remembers. On the surface, a mirror seems harmless, just a passive surface reflecting back light. But beneath that simplicity lies something far more unnerving. Because when you stare into your reflection, you're not just seeing yourself, you're witnessing an illusion of permanence. The person in the mirror looks stable, consistent. You recognize the shape of your nose, the texture of your skin, the angle of your expression, and yet the self you see has changed countless times. You've grown, you've aged, cells have died, new ones have formed. Your thoughts, beliefs, memories, none of them are static. So what exactly is the mirror remembering? Here's the twist. Your reflection doesn't just echo what you are, it clings to what you were. It remembers the person you try to be, the roles you play, the mask you wear, and in doing so, it traps you in the story you've told yourself about who you are. Every time you glance into that glass, you reinforce the idea that this is me, that face, that identity, that version. But what if you've changed and the mirror hasn't caught up? What if the reflection is lying? There's an eerie phenomenon known as the strange face illusion. When people stare at their reflection for extended periods, especially in low light, the face begins to distort. It melts, warps, becomes unrecognizable. Some even see strangers, monsters, or people long dead. The brain, deprived of new visual input, starts to hallucinate, revealing how fragile your perception of self truly is. And that raises a disturbing possibility. What if the mirror is less a reflection of reality and more a window into your assumptions? The paradox deepens when you consider memory. We tend to believe that we remember ourselves accurately, that we know who we've been. But just like a mirror, memory is distorted. It filters. It edits. It constructs a narrative. So when you look into a mirror, you're not just seeing your current self. You're projecting a story of who you think you've always been. But what if that story is wrong? What if the mirror remembers someone you've outgrown? Someone you no longer are, but still feel obligated to be? The reflection becomes a ghost of yourself, a reminder not of who you are, but who you were supposed to be. It traps you in yesterday. So the next time you look into a mirror, ask yourself this: is this really me? Or is this just the version of me I've agreed to remember? Because maybe, just maybe, the reflection is watching too, quietly recording every moment you've doubted, denied, or defined yourself. And when you return to it, it offers that version back to you, perfectly preserved. A mirror never forgets, but that doesn't mean it tells the truth. Have you ever longed for a place you've never visited? Felt a strange pull toward a city you've never walked, a coastline you've never seen, or a street that exists only in dreams? This is the paradox of places you've never been, yet miss with a quiet ache. as if your heart remembers what your life has never touched. You can't explain it. A photo, a smell, a certain kind of weather. And suddenly, you're flooded with nostalgia for somewhere your body has never been. How is that possible? How can you miss a place that never belonged to your story? Some call it déjà vu. Others call it past life memory, ancestral echo, or genetic memory. But no explanation quite captures the haunting familiarity of yearning for a home that doesn't exist in your waking past. A home that whispers through intuition, not experience. It feels like something ancient, like remembering a dream you didn't know you had. But what if the feeling is not from the past, but from the future? Some thinkers believe time doesn't flow linearly, not in the way we perceive. In that view, your consciousness might be brushing against future memories or parallel timelines. That strange nostalgia could be the echo of a life unlived, a path you didn't choose, but one that still lives in the hidden corners of possibility. A version of you that did go to that place, who stood on that street, who left a piece of themselves behind, and somehow, you're remembering it. Or maybe it's not your memory at all. Maybe we inherit emotional landscapes. Maybe your longing is not yours, but your grandmother's, or someone else in your bloodline who once stood in that exact place and felt something unforgettable. And now that ache has been passed to you, not in words, but in feeling. But here's the deeper paradox. These places you've never been might not exist in space, but in you. They may be metaphors, symbols, representations of states of being, freedom, safety, belonging, wonder. What you're missing isn't a location, but a version of yourself you haven't yet found. The place is a vessel, and your longing is the message. Still, it doesn't stop the feeling, the strange, intimate ache of missing a city at sunset, or an apartment balcony somewhere foreign, or a train you never boarded, yet feel you once sat in, staring at a rain-covered window. It's like grief for something you never had, but grief nonetheless. And here's what makes it so haunting. You can't ever truly return to what you never left. You can search, travel, explore endlessly, and never find the exact moment your soul seems to remember. So what do you do with that kind of longing? Maybe you don't chase it. Maybe you let it become a quiet companion. A reminder that not all parts of you are bound to what's happened. Some are shaped by what could have happened, by the silent dreams of your deeper mind. And in that way, the places you miss, those you've never been, might just be the truest parts of who you are. Not bound to maps or memory, but to feeling, to wonder, to home. Not as a point on a compass, but as a space within you still waiting to be reached. You wake up and you feel like yourself. Same name, same memories, same body, more or less. But what if that's the illusion? What if every night as you sleep, the self you were dies? And what wakes up is a stranger wearing your memories like borrowed clothes. This is the paradox of the stranger you'll become tomorrow. We like to think of the self as constant, a thread that stretches unbroken through time. But that's not quite true. Every 7 years, nearly every cell in your body has been replaced. Your thoughts shift, your emotions evolve, your opinions change. The person you were a decade ago might feel familiar, but would they recognize the person you are now? Would they agree with your choices, your values? Would they even like you? And if the answer is maybe not, then who are you really? There's a haunting truth tucked into our everyday routine. We are constantly becoming people we've never met. Tomorrow's version of you will look back on today with a different perspective. They might regret your choices. They might celebrate them. But either way, they will be a different consciousness, shaped by different moments. So, when you say, "I will do this tomorrow," who exactly is the I you're speaking for? You're making promises on behalf of someone who doesn't exist yet. Even your thoughts, those silent streams you believe are yours, are built from things you've absorbed: language, media, memories, moods, even the words you use to describe your feelings. They all come from the world outside, and the mind interprets and rearranges them, building a self out of fragments. And here's the twist: that construction is never finished. It's under renovation every second. Your personality is not fixed. It's a reaction to your surroundings, to your interactions, to what you learn and unlearn. The stranger you'll become tomorrow is forming right now, quietly, in the background, as new ideas settle and old beliefs begin to crumble. We don't notice the change because it's gradual, but one day you stumble across an old photo or an old message you wrote, and the dissonance is sharp. You don't relate to that version of you. Their fears, their dreams, even their handwriting feels foreign. The self is not a river, it's a storm, constantly shifting. And yet we cling to the illusion of a stable me. Why? Because identity gives us comfort. It's the anchor we hold onto in a sea of uncertainty. But perhaps it's not an anchor at all. Perhaps it's driftwood, something to keep us afloat as we move, not something to keep us still. And so we come to the paradox. If you are always becoming someone new, who do you owe anything to? Are you responsible for the decisions made by your past selves? Or are they just ghosts inhabiting your body, long gone but still shaping your path? Perhaps the deepest challenge of life is learning to meet the stranger you become, again and again, and finding the grace to accept them. You are not who you were yesterday. You are not who you will be tomorrow. You are the ever-vanishing point between two versions of yourself, both fading, both unknowable, and in that space, something beautiful happens. You change. Imagine stepping out of a room, your bedroom, an office, an old childhood space, and as the door closes behind you, something impossible begins to happen. The room expands, its walls stretch, ceilings rise, corners fold into new dimensions. The space becomes something larger, stranger, more infinite than when you were inside it, and you will never see it happen. This is the paradox of the room that grows when you leave it. At first it sounds like fantasy, but think about it metaphorically. Places change when we're not in them, not physically, but in meaning, in memory, in mystery. Absence doesn't shrink a place, it enlarges it. The longer you're away from a room, the more symbolic it becomes. It turns into something other than four walls. It becomes a container for who you used to be, and maybe who you still are when no one's looking. The room becomes haunted, not by ghosts, but by time. You think of your childhood bedroom, not as it was, but as you remember it. In your mind, it's vivid, magical, tragic, safe. That room has grown. It's larger now than it ever was when you lived in it, because now it's not just space, it's story. Strangely, this happens with people too. The further you drift from someone, an old friend, a lover, even a stranger you once passed in the hallway, the more space they take up in your mind. Their presence grows in absence, just like the room. They become something infinite, unreachable, mythic. The paradox is this: when you're in a room, you're too close to see its full shape. You only see what the moment allows. But once you leave, memory starts filling in the gaps, coloring it with emotions, dreams, distortions, and suddenly, the room becomes something else entirely. Something more, Is it still the same place? Or is it now a different world altogether? One only you can access through your memory. Even science brushes up against this strangeness. Quantum physics suggests that observation collapses possibility into a fixed reality. When you're present, the room is one thing. But when you're gone, when it is no longer observed, does it return to being pure potential? A room unobserved might be larger than we can fathom, not spatially, but symbolically, and yet you'll never see it grow. You can't. Because to see it would collapse it back into what it was. So what does that say about our lives? Maybe we're always living in shrinking rooms. Maybe meaning only truly blooms when we step away, when we reflect, when we remember, when we let something go. And in that letting go, it expands into something far richer than what it was while we clung to it. Your favorite cafe after moving away, the house of a friend you haven't spoken to in years, even an empty hallway you used to walk daily. These places have grown. They have entire universes folded inside them now, and you carry those universes within you. But here's the tragedy. The room only grows for you when you're not inside it. And the moment you return, the magic collapses. It's just a room again, smaller, real, finite. Maybe that's why some doors are better left closed, because some spaces are meant to grow, only in our absence. You're handed a map. On it are roads, cities, forests, your entire world. The lines are clean, the borders precise, and everything seems to have its place. But as you begin to move across it, something unsettling happens. The map changes. Paths that once existed disappear. New ones form. Landmarks shift, twist, and dissolve into new meanings. Every step you take rewrites the territory itself. This is the paradox of the map that rewrites itself. We crave maps, not just of places, but of life. We draw them early. Expectations, plans, identities. We say, this is who I am. This is what I'll do. This is how the world works. These inner maps become our guide. But as we begin to live, really live, we discover that reality doesn't follow our diagrams. The terrain is wild. Our maps are guesses, not guarantees. Yet here's the trap. We keep trusting them. We mistake the map for the territory, the plan for the experience. But no matter how much we study, no matter how carefully we chart, life has a way of moving the goalposts. The moment you think you understand it, it changes. And it's not just the world that shifts. You change too. The person who began the journey is not the one who will finish it. Your priorities, your dreams, even your perception of the landscape, they evolve with every experience. So the path you thought you wanted at 20 may become meaningless by 30. The map becomes outdated the moment you take your first step. What's more, we often create maps based on inherited knowledge, culture, family, education. But these aren't our maps, they're templates. And following someone else's path can lead you deep into a life that doesn't feel like your own. You wake up one day in a place that looks nothing like the dream you thought you were chasing. So what do? We adapt. We redraw. We realize that maybe the map is meant to be rewritten. In ancient times, maps had edges labeled with the words, "Here be dragons." It was a way of acknowledging mystery, the unknown. A silent admission that the map had limits, that some things couldn't be charted. Maybe that's where the real life begins, at the edge of the map, in the places no one dared draw. The paradox becomes clear. You need a map to start the journey, but once you begin, the map is no longer true. And yet you still must walk, still must choose, even though the path keeps changing. Maybe that's the point. Maybe life was never about reaching a destination, but about how courageously you walk through a world that won't stop shifting beneath your feet. A world that refuses to be pinned down. A world that asks you to keep rewriting your understanding, your expectations, yourself. So carry your map, but don't be afraid to tear it up when the road demands it. Because the journey was never about the map. It was always about learning how to move through the unknown with curiosity, humility, and the quiet strength to keep going, even when the path you're on didn't exist a moment ago. Imagine this. You're holding a word in your mind, just one. Let's say it's a simple word like tree. Now look at that word, really look at it. The letters, the shape, the sound it makes in your mind. And then something strange happens. The word begins to lose its meaning. It becomes a jumble of sounds, a series of nonsensical letters strung together, and you can't help but wonder if it ever had meaning at all. The more you repeat it, the less familiar it feels. The more you think about it, the further away it seems. This is the paradox of the word that erases its own meaning. Language is our bridge to the world. It gives us the ability to understand, to communicate, to make sense of the chaos of existence. Yet, every word is fragile. It's built on an assumption that we all agree on its meaning. That when I say tree, you know exactly what I mean. But what if that meaning is not as stable as we think? What if, over time, the very concept that a word refers to, its essence, begins to unravel? Think about how quickly words evolve. Cool once referred to temperature, but today it refers to something stylish or admirable. Literally used to mean exactly as stated, but now it's often used to emphasize hyperbole, as in, I literally died laughing. Meanings shift, bend, and even break. The words we use often don't represent a solid truth. They represent an agreed-upon interpretation, one that is in many ways temporary. Now, take it a step further. What if the more you think about a word, the more you question it, the more you lose its original meaning? This happens when you dwell on something so much that it becomes abstract and strange. You've all experienced it. Say a word over and over until it sounds like a series of noises rather than a meaningful unit of language. The word tree no longer conjures the image of a tree, but instead becomes a collection of sounds, utterly disconnected from its original meaning. This is the paradox in action. The more you focus on a word, the more it starts to lose the connection to the concept it was meant to represent. The word can't help but undo itself. In trying to define and understand it, you make it less understandable. It's like trying to hold on to a thought as it slips away. The tighter you grasp it, the further it moves out of your reach. Now let's zoom out a little. This paradox is not just about individual words. It's about how all language works. Language is built on the premise that signs, words, represent things, objects, ideas, emotions. But as soon as you start to break down this connection, things get messy. The word tree doesn't capture the experience of standing under a tree. It doesn't smell the pine, hear the rustle of the leaves, or feel the bark under your hand. The word is an abstraction, a shadow of the experience. The more you try to isolate and define it, the more the experience itself evaporates. And here's where the paradox deepens. In the attempt to make sense of the world, we use words, but those same words often fail us. The more we focus on dissecting the meaning of a word, the more we lose the essence of what it tries to convey. It's like trying to hold on to water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, faster it slips away. Is this a flaw of language? Or is it a reflection of the human condition? Perhaps it's a reminder that meaning is elusive. We can't fully grasp or capture reality in neat, tidy definitions. Every time we attempt to articulate an idea or feeling, it slips through our fingers. The word we use to define an experience never fully encompasses that experience itself. Language is, in many ways, a placeholder for the ineffable. This brings us to the ultimate question. If words can't fully convey meaning, then how can we truly know anything at all? If language itself is a system that slowly erodes the meanings it tries to preserve, can we ever understand the world with certainty? Are we doomed to live in a fog of shifting definitions, each word an attempt to capture something we can never truly grasp? Perhaps the answer lies not in trying to define the world, but in embracing its fluidity. The paradox invites us to acknowledge that the meaning of things is always in flux. Maybe we don't need to hold on to words too tightly, but instead let them float, knowing that their meaning will shift with time, experience, and context. Language is both our tool and our limitation, forever pointing towards something just beyond our grasp. So, the next time you say a word over and over, and it begins to lose its meaning, don't fight it. Let it dissolve. Because in that moment, you might be seeing the world for what it truly is, a place where meaning is always shifting, always just out of reach, and always worth exploring. There are moments in life that slip through the cracks of memory, moments so brief, so fleeting, that they barely register as experiences. But even in their quiet passing, they are significant. They shape us, influence us, without our ever being aware of them. And here lies the paradox. The moments that define us the most are often the ones we will never remember. Picture a day, a seemingly ordinary day, filled with 1,000 tiny moments, a glance exchanged with a stranger, a word spoken in passing, the feeling of your feet touching the ground as you walk down a familiar street. You move through these moments, unaware of their impact, unaware that they are quietly stitching together the fabric of your life. But when you look back, you can't recall them. They are gone, vanishing into the void of forgotten time. The paradox is this: the most profound moments are often the ones that will never be remembered. The memories that stick with us, the milestones, the big events, are the ones that loom large in our minds. We can call them up at will, revisit them, analyze them. But the quiet moments, the ones that seem insignificant at the time, are the ones that make us who we are, even though we can never hold on to them. Consider this. You meet someone for the first time. You shake hands, exchange a few pleasantries, and then part ways. At the time, it seems trivial, but years later, you might realize that that one brief interaction set in motion a chain of events that altered the course of your life. Maybe that handshake was the beginning of a relationship that changed you. Or perhaps that moment sparked an idea that led you down a path you never anticipated. Yet, in the moment itself, you can't recall anything special about it. You can't remember the words spoken, the look on the person's face, or the way the air felt around you. The moment itself is lost to time. This brings us to the core of the paradox. How can something so small, so easily forgotten, have such a profound effect on our lives? We often think that the important moments are the ones we can remember, the ones that leave a mark on our minds. But in truth, it's the moments that escape our consciousness, the ones that slip by unnoticed, that weave the tapestry of our existence. The very nature of life is such that we can never fully grasp the importance of the present moment. We are always moving forward, always leaving behind a trail of forgotten experiences that, in their quiet way, shape who we become. What is it about these forgotten moments that gives them such power? Perhaps it's the sheer unpredictability of life. We never know which moment will be the one that changes us. A casual conversation with a friend, a quiet moment of reflection in the corner of a room, or the decision to take a different route home. These are the moments that we will never be able to fully appreciate in the moment, but they hold the potential to transform us in ways we can't understand. In a sense, life is a constant stream of these unremembered moments. Every minute, every hour, every day, we are surrounded by experiences that we will never consciously recall, but they accumulate, shaping our thoughts, our decisions, our desires, and our fears. The paradox lies in the fact that these moments, while forgotten, are the very fabric of our existence. They are the silent architects of our future selves, constructing a reality that we can never quite trace back to its source. So, why do we cling to the moments we can remember? Why do we place so much value on the experiences that are captured in our minds, when in reality, it is the unremembered ones that form the foundation of our lives? Perhaps it's because we seek control. We want to be able to look back on our lives and say, I did this. I made this happen. We want to have a narrative, a story with clear beginnings and ends. But life doesn't work that way. The moments that truly define us are often the ones that are lost in time, slipping away before we even realize their significance. In a way, the paradox teaches us a profound truth about the nature of experience. We can't hold on to everything. Some moments must be allowed to pass, to fade into the background, in order for the rest of our lives to unfold. Perhaps this is the beauty of life's impermanence. We are constantly evolving, constantly becoming, even in the moments we can never remember. So the next time you find yourself in a seemingly insignificant moment, take a step back and appreciate it for what it is. A fleeting fragment of your life, a piece of the puzzle that will never be fully understood, yet will always shape you in ways you can never fully comprehend. But how does this paradox work in a more profound sense? We can't see the future, not in the way we want to. There are no clear, distinct images of the years ahead. There are no guaranteed outcomes. Yet the paradox suggests that our future is embedded in our present, like a seed waiting to sprout. The way we act today, the choices we make, are the seeds that will grow into the reality we live tomorrow. In this way, the mirror becomes a tool of introspection, showing us not just who we are, but who we might become if we continue down this path. There's also a deeper, more unsettling question hidden within this paradox. What if the future is already determined, and we're simply acting out a script we cannot see? What if our reflection is an echo of a future that has already been set in motion, and the choices we make today are not truly ours to control? This idea confronts the very nature of free will. If the mirror shows a glimpse of the future, is the future already written? Are we just living in the reflection of an inevitable path? On a psychological level, we are constantly projecting into the future. We imagine what might come next, and we try to prepare for it. But these projections are often based on what we already know about ourselves, the patterns of behavior, the fears, and the dreams that have been with us for years. In this sense, the mirror is simply reflecting back those projections. What we see in the mirror is not just who we are today, but a manifestation of our deepest assumptions about who we will be. This paradox forces us to confront the uncertainty of the future, while also recognizing that it may already be reflected in the choices we make today. The person you see in the mirror now is a blueprint for who you might become, shaped by both your past and your present. Every glance at your reflection is a reminder that the future is not some distant, abstract event. It's unfolding right now, in the present moment, in the choices you make, in the person you choose to become. So, the next time you look into a mirror, take a moment to wonder, are you only seeing who you are now? Or are you catching a glimpse of the future, a reflection of the person you are becoming without even realizing it? Imagine standing in front of a mirror. You look into it, and your reflection stares back at you, unchanged. It's a simple moment, a daily occurrence. But what if I told you that this reflection doesn't just mirror who you are right now? What if, in some strange way, the mirror could show you not just the present, but your future? This is the paradox of the mirror that reflects the future. We often think of mirrors as tools that only reflect the present moment. They capture the version of ourselves that stands before them, frozen in time. But what if there's something more to this reflective surface than meets the eye? What if, in looking into the mirror, we could see not only who we are, but who we might become? It sounds absurd, yet it presents a thought-provoking question. What if the future is already written, hidden in plain sight, within the reflection we see every day? Think about it this way. Mirrors are often linked to self-reflection. We gaze into them, and we think about who we are. We check our appearance, our demeanor, and sometimes even our soul. In many ways, the mirror is a metaphor for introspection. It forces us to confront the present self, our choices, our habits, our desires. But if we accept that our reflection shows who we are, could it also be revealing who we will become? Could the image in the mirror somehow predict the path ahead, the person we are destined to be? At first glance, this idea sounds preposterous. The mirror is just a piece of glass, reflecting light, and it has no magical power to see the future. It simply reflects the here and now. But here's where the paradox comes into play. While we believe the mirror only reflects the present, could it be that the mirror is not limited to the present moment? Could the way we appear in the mirror now give us hints about the future? What if our reflection is a snapshot of a life we are already walking toward, even if we are unaware of it? Take a moment to reflect on your habits, the small, seemingly insignificant actions you take every day, the way you choose to spend your time, the relationships you nurture, and the thoughts you entertain. These moments, these choices, often go unnoticed as we rush through life. But in those quiet moments, the reflection in the mirror is forming, the path that will lead you to the person you are becoming. It is shaping your future, just as your past shaped who you are now. And so, in a sense, the mirror doesn't just show who you are in the present, but hints at who you might become. The lines on your face might not only reveal the years you've lived, but the experiences you have yet to encounter. The expression in your eyes might tell a story of things you haven't yet realized about yourself. Even the posture you hold, the way you stand or sit, could be an indicator of the future self you are unknowingly becoming. Imagine for a moment that you have acquired all the knowledge in the world. You know everything, every fact, every truth, every answer to every question that has ever been asked. From the mysteries of the universe to the deepest intricacies of human nature, there is nothing left for you to learn. You are a walking encyclopedia, a fountain of absolute, unchallenged knowledge. In your mind, there is no gap, no uncertainty, no void of understanding. Everything is clear, complete. You are the epitome of wisdom. Now, here's the paradox. The more knowledge you acquire, the more you realize that you know nothing at all. The more you learn, the more you uncover the vastness of what you don't know. It's a cyclical trap. Each answer you find leads to more questions, and each discovery opens the door to even greater mysteries. In striving for complete knowledge, you only deepen your awareness of your own ignorance. This paradox is grounded in the very nature of knowledge itself. The more we learn, the more we are confronted with the fact that our understanding is always incomplete. The idea of achieving total, absolute knowledge is, in itself, an illusion. No matter how much information you gather, there will always be something beyond your grasp, some truth that remains just out of reach. Take a moment to reflect on the vastness of the universe. We've made incredible strides in understanding the cosmos, mapping the stars, studying black holes, and exploring distant planets. But even with all of our technological advancements, there are still entire realms of existence we can barely comprehend. The universe, it seems, is infinite, and our understanding of it will always be limited. No matter how much knowledge we accumulate, we will never fully grasp the entire expanse of existence. And it's not just the external world that eludes us. The human mind itself is a boundless mystery. We have spent centuries studying psychology, neurology, and cognition, yet we still cannot fully understand how consciousness arises, how thoughts form, or how memory works. The more we delve into the human experience, the more we realize that our understanding is riddled with gaps. We know so little about what makes us, us. The very question of who we are, what it means to be human, is still as elusive as ever. The paradox deepens when you consider the nature of knowledge itself. We often think of knowledge as a collection of facts, data points that can be learned and stored away. But true understanding is not merely about accumulating information. It is about making connections, seeing patterns, and drawing insights that go beyond the surface level. The deeper we look, the more layers we uncover, and the more we realize that every answer leads to even more profound questions. Knowledge is not a static entity that can be fully attained. It is a living, evolving process, one that grows and changes as we continue to explore, learn, and question. This constant expansion of knowledge brings us to a crucial realization. There is no end point. The pursuit of complete knowledge is an endless journey. The more you know, the more you realize that knowledge is not a destination, but a process, an ongoing exploration of the unknown. To think that you can ever reach the point of complete understanding is a fallacy. It's the very nature of the universe and human existence that knowledge is inherently incomplete. At this point, it's important to consider what this means for our sense of certainty. We live in a world that often values certainty, that demands answers to the most complex questions. We are taught to seek solutions, to find clear, definitive explanations for everything. But the paradox of knowledge suggests that certainty is an illusion. The more we seek clear answers, the more we are confronted with ambiguity. Every truth we uncover only serves to highlight the vastness of what we do not know. And in this vastness, there is no final, ultimate answer. So, in seeking complete knowledge, we are actually confronted with the realization that we can never fully know anything. This paradox challenges our assumptions about certainty and completeness. It invites us to embrace uncertainty, to accept that some questions may never have definitive answers, and to recognize that the pursuit of knowledge is not about reaching an endpoint, but about continuously evolving and expanding our understanding of the world. Perhaps the most profound lesson of this paradox is that true wisdom lies not in having all the answers, but in recognizing the limits of our understanding. It lies in accepting that knowledge is a journey, not a destination. The more we know, the more we realize how much there is left to discover, and in that discovery, we find the beauty and mystery of existence. So, the next time you feel the urge to seek complete knowledge, take a step back and acknowledge the paradox. The more you learn, the less you truly know. embrace the uncertainty, and allow it to guide you on the endless journey of exploration. For it is in the search itself that the true value of knowledge is found. Imagine standing at a crossroads in your life, facing two paths ahead of you. The decision seems simple at first. Take the left path or the right one. You weigh your options, deliberate on the consequences of each choice, and ultimately, you make a decision. It feels like you've exercised your free will. You've made an independent choice, one that is uniquely yours. But here's the paradox. What if that very act of choosing is part of a cycle over which you have no control? What if your free will is not as free as you think it is, but rather an illusion created by the very conditions that influence your decisions? This is the paradox of the infinite loop of free will. At first glance, the idea of free will seems like the essence of human agency. We pride ourselves on the ability to make choices that reflect our desires, our values, and our thoughts. It is central to our sense of individuality, our belief that we control our own destiny. But the deeper we dig into this concept, the more elusive it becomes. The paradox begins to unfold when we ask, if our choices are shaped by external factors, our environment, our upbringing, our biology, are we truly free to choose? Or are we simply responding to these factors like marionettes on invisible strings? Consider the way your past experiences shape the decisions you make today. Every thought, every belief, every habit you have is the product of countless factors that have influenced you over the years. Your upbringing, culture, education, and even your genetics all play a role in forming the person you are. Each of these elements is a small cog in the machine of your decision-making process. When you choose a path, how much of that choice is really yours? Or are you simply following the script that has been written for you by all these external influences? Even when we believe we are making choices that reflect our deepest desires, we are still influenced by these external factors. Think about the last time you made a major decision. Perhaps you chose a career path, moved to a new city, or entered into a relationship. It felt like an independent, free choice. But when you reflect on it, you realize that many of the motivations behind that decision were shaped by factors outside of your immediate control. Your family's expectations, societal pressures, or even subconscious biases influenced the course you took. In this sense, your so-called free will is merely a byproduct of a chain of influences that extend far beyond your awareness. This brings us to a deeper and more unsettling aspect of the paradox. The idea that even the perception of free will is influenced by the very systems that constrain us. We think of free will as a moment of personal sovereignty, where we can choose freely without interference. But what if the moment of choice itself is an illusion, carefully constructed by our conditioning? What if we are not truly free to choose, but are simply cycling through a predetermined set of responses based on our past experiences and environment? As this paradox unfolds, it becomes clear that free will and determinism are not opposing forces. Rather, they are two sides of the same coin. The choices we make are determined by the endless loop of past experiences, yet those choices still feel free because we have no direct awareness of the forces at play. It's a paradoxical dance. Our decisions are both free and determined, trapped in an eternal loop. But there's another layer to this paradox, one that challenges the very foundation of how we understand choice. Imagine that the illusion of free will is not just a consequence of our environment or our past, but is necessary for our survival. If we were fully aware of how our decisions were truly shaped by external forces, we might be paralyzed by the realization that we are not in control. The feeling of freedom, the ability to believe we are making independent choices, is what allows us to function in the world. It is the illusion that gives us the motivation to act, to move forward in life, and to believe that we have power over our future. Yet this very illusion of free will is what keeps us trapped. We continue to make decisions based on the belief that we have control, even as the forces around us shape our choices in ways we cannot see. The more we fight for control, the more we are trapped in the infinite loop of free will. The paradox is that the desire for true freedom only reinforces our enslavement to the very systems that limit our choices. The infinite loop of free will is not just a philosophical concept. It plays out in our everyday lives. We go through life making decisions, believing that we are the masters of our fate, all the while unaware of the invisible forces that shape our thoughts and actions. Each choice we make feels like a moment of self-determination, yet it is always tethered to the web of past experiences, conditioning, and external influences. The paradox also challenges the very nature of responsibility. If our choices are influenced by factors beyond our control, how responsible are we for the decisions we make? Are we truly accountable for our actions, or are we merely responding to the circumstances of our lives? This question doesn't have an easy answer, but it forces us to confront the complexity of human freedom and the limits of our understanding. In the end, the paradox of the infinite loop of free will leaves us with an uncomfortable but profound realization. True freedom may not lie in the ability to make independent choices, but in the awareness that our choices are shaped by forces beyond our control. Accepting this reality does not mean giving up our agency, but rather recognizing the interplay between freedom and determinism. It's a delicate balance, one that calls us to live consciously in the tension between the two, understanding that we are both free and bound by the choices we make. So, as you move forward in life, ask yourself, how free are you, really? How much of your sense of freedom is an illusion, and how much of it is shaped by the world around you? And most importantly, how will you live with the knowledge that your free will may not be as free as you think? At this very moment, as you read these words, you may feel a sense of control over your thoughts, your actions, and your decisions. You may believe that the decisions you make are entirely yours, shaped by your desires, your experiences, and your reasoning. Your hand moves as you choose. Your eyes scan the text according to your will, and your mind processes these words as a deliberate act of conscious control. But here's the paradox. What if the illusion of control is the only thing that keeps us from understanding just how little control we truly have? What if the very sense of being in charge of our lives, of making free and independent decisions, is nothing more than a trick our minds play on us to protect us from a deeper, more unsettling truth? The paradox of control lies in this very question. The more you believe you control your life, the more you realize that the control you think you have is an illusion crafted by your subconscious, your environment, and the countless unseen forces that shape your existence. Take a moment and consider the elements of your life that you believe you control. Your career, your relationships, your health, your financial stability. Each one may feel like a product of your choices, your actions, and your effort. You think, perhaps, that you are steering the ship, making the calls, shaping your destiny. But the reality is that many of these aspects of your life are influenced by forces far beyond your conscious understanding. For example, consider your career path. Sure, you may have made decisions to pursue a particular field, to study a certain subject, or to apply for a specific job. You may feel that you shaped your own professional journey with your own hands. But if you look closely, you'll see the invisible threads at play: societal expectations, economic trends, educational opportunities, and even luck or chance that pushed you in one direction rather than another. The economy may shift, the job market may change, and opportunities may open or close based on factors beyond your control. Did you really decide the path you are on, or were you nudged along by forces outside your grasp? Similarly, think about your relationships. The people you interact with, their personalities, their moods, their beliefs, are all influenced by complex factors such as upbringing, social environment, and personal history. Your interactions, too, are shaped by your own background, emotional state, and biases. When you interact with others, it may feel like you are the one in control, navigating the conversation or deciding the course of the relationship. But what if your sense of control in these interactions is more illusion than reality? What if you are merely reacting to the dynamics of the moment, influenced by subconscious forces and patterns of behavior that you have little control over? Even your health, something as deeply personal as the state of your body, is influenced by a variety of factors that you may not fully control. Genetics, environmental conditions, lifestyle choices, and even the simple act of luck or fate can have a significant impact on your well-being. You may make conscious choices to eat well, exercise, and avoid harmful habits, but there are still elements beyond your influence. Illnesses that can strike without warning, accidents that can alter the course of your life, and conditions that may be written into your very DNA. You can try to maintain control over your health, but ultimately, there are aspects that remain beyond your grasp. The paradox of control deepens when you consider how much of our behavior is governed by unconscious forces. Our minds are full of biases, conditioned responses, and habitual patterns that shape our decisions without our even realizing it. You may think that you are making rational decisions, but in reality, much of what you do is influenced by deeply ingrained patterns of thought and behavior. For instance, the way you react to stress, your emotional responses to certain situations, and even your preferences and desires can be the result of conditioning that occurred long before you were aware of it. In this sense, your sense of control over your actions may be more of a psychological defense mechanism, allowing you to believe that you are in charge when, in fact, your decisions are being guided by forces you can't see. Now consider the larger systems at play in the world. From politics to economics to cultural trends, there are vast, intricate networks of influence that shape your choices and opportunities in ways that you cannot control. The very air you breathe, the technology you use, the laws that govern your behavior, these are all external forces that impact your daily life. You may make choices within the system, but the system itself is beyond your control. In this way, the illusion of control persists as you navigate the world, but it is not a true freedom. You are constantly reacting to the larger forces around you, and your choices are shaped by the structures in which you live. The paradox, then, is this: in order to function and thrive in the world, you must believe that you have control, even though the control you feel is not entirely yours. Your sense of agency is a necessary illusion, a construct of the mind that allows you to navigate the complexities of life. Without this belief, you might feel helpless, lost, or overwhelmed by the vastness of forces beyond your control. The belief in control is what gives us the confidence to take action, to make decisions, and to move forward. Without it, we might find ourselves paralyzed, unable to act because we perceive ourselves as powerless. But the more we examine this illusion, the more we begin to see the cracks in its foundation. We realize that control is not an absolute, but rather a delicate balance between what we can influence and what we cannot. It is a dynamic relationship, one in which we constantly negotiate our sense of agency with the understanding that much of our lives are shaped by forces beyond our conscious awareness. Ultimately, the paradox of control invites us to reflect on the nature of power and agency. We are not entirely free, and we are not entirely powerless. We live in a world where we must find a way to exercise our influence while acknowledging the forces that shape our lives. True wisdom, perhaps, lies in recognizing the limits of our control and finding peace within the tension between action and surrender. So the next time you feel like you are fully in control of your life, take a step back and ask yourself, how much of this control is truly mine, and how much of it is shaped by forces beyond my understanding? And in that recognition, find the freedom to act with a deeper awareness of the illusion at play. Imagine this: you wake up to a new day. You look at yourself in the mirror, feeling the passage of time in your bones. You have grown, aged, changed. Your body shifts with each breath. Your thoughts move through their own processes, and your surroundings are in a constant state of flux. The world is always in motion, never still. New information is coming in, new events are unfolding, and even the universe itself continues to expand in ways we cannot fully comprehend. But amidst this constant change, there is an undeniable sense that certain things in life remain unchanged. The sun rises and sets, the seasons shift, and in many ways, life follows a familiar rhythm. At first glance, the contradiction seems clear. Change and stasis, two forces pulling in opposite directions. Yet, this paradox suggests something much deeper. Both change and stasis are inseparable, simultaneously occurring at the same time, forming a fundamental aspect of existence itself. Let's break this down further. Consider your own life. You might feel different today than you did a year ago. You've experienced new events, learned new things, and maybe even altered your beliefs, your goals, and your perspective. Change is an inevitable part of existence. It's the thread that runs through everything, constantly unraveling and reweaving the fabric of your life. From a biological perspective, your cells are constantly renewing themselves. Your brain is constantly reshaping through experiences and memories, and the world around you is continually evolving. Yet, even as all this change happens, there is a core sense of continuity. You remain, in some ways, the same person. Your name hasn't changed. The fundamental essence of who you are still exists. Your habits, your core personality traits, the things that define you to the world, have not completely disappeared or morphed into something unrecognizable. In a way, you are still tethered to your past self, even as your future self takes shape. This constant sense of continuity is what makes the present moment feel real. It's the part of you that is never completely swept away by the tides of time. The paradox, then, lies in the simultaneous existence of both these dynamics. Change and stasis. On one hand, you are constantly becoming, evolving, and moving forward. On the other hand, the very act of being, existing in the present, remains rooted in something fixed. This duality leads us to a profound realization. Without stasis, change could not be recognized. The very notion of change relies on the existence of something that remains constant, some foundation upon which transformation occurs. It's the stillness of the ground beneath our feet that allows us to see and experience movement. In the realm of the universe, this paradox is even more striking. The universe is constantly expanding, evolving, and creating new stars, galaxies, and phenomena that we may never fully understand. The cosmic dance is ongoing, an eternal cycle of birth, destruction, and rebirth. Yet, on a cosmic scale, certain Laws of nature remain unchanged, the laws of physics, gravity, time and space. These principles act as the bedrock upon which all of this change takes place, and without them, the universe would be unrecognizable. Even as galaxies are born and die, there is an unchanging framework that binds the entire cosmos together, like the invisible threads connecting a vast and complex tapestry. This same paradox can be applied to the world of human history. The events of the past have shaped who we are today. From the dawn of civilization to the present moment, humanity has evolved through revolutions, discoveries, and crises that have changed the course of our development. Yet, despite the dramatic changes in technology, society, and culture, the fundamental nature of humanity has remained largely the same. We continue to grapple with questions of existence, purpose, morality, and connection, questions that have been asked since the earliest days of human thought. Our capacity for love, for fear, for hope, and for despair has remained a constant across time. What's most intriguing about this paradox is the way it informs our perception of time. Time, as we experience it, is often perceived as a continuous flow, always moving forward, carrying us along with it. Yet, within the stream of time, there are moments of stillness, places where everything feels suspended in a way that defies the rush of change. It might happen during a quiet reflection, a moment of clarity, or even a stillness in nature where time seems to slow down, offering a glimpse of eternity. In these moments, the paradox becomes clear. While time continues to flow, there are points in it where we can experience an unchanging stillness, even amidst the relentless motion. At the same time, our own personal experience of time is a dance between change and stasis. Each day we may wake up with a sense of who we are, yet as the hours pass, we undergo shifts in perception, in mood, in understanding. The events of the day alter our state of mind, yet by the end of it, we return to a semblance of who we were before. This cyclical experience of becoming and returning, of change and stasis, is the very rhythm of human life. It's also worth noting how this paradox applies to our memories. Memories, by their nature, change over time. As you recall past events, the images, emotions, and meanings attached to those memories shift, influenced by your current state of mind. Yet the essence of those memories, their fundamental existence, remains fixed. They are anchored in the past, frozen in time, yet constantly reshaped in our present minds. In this sense, the memory of the past exists in a state of both change and stasis. It remains the same, yet it is never the same. In the broader context, we see that the paradox of simultaneous change and stasis is a foundational principle of existence itself. It's the tension between what is and what could be, between the known and the unknown, between stability and growth. This paradox suggests that life, in its most profound sense, is not about choosing one side over the other, but rather about embracing the delicate balance between the two. By recognizing the interplay of change and stasis, we come to understand that the world is not defined by one absolute state, but by the constant interaction of these forces, each giving meaning to the other. Ultimately, the paradox of simultaneous change and stasis asks us to consider a deeper truth, that true transformation can only happen when there is something to transform, something to build upon. It's the fixed point in the ever-shifting landscape that allows us to measure progress, to appreciate the flow of time, and to understand the profound, cyclical nature of existence. Have you ever had the sensation that the you think you are isn't quite as singular as you believed? That deep down, There are multiple selves vying for control over your decisions, actions, and sense of identity. This may seem like a contradiction. After all, we all live our lives with a fundamental sense of continuity, a clear sense of self that guides us through the world. Yet, if you look closer, you might begin to see a complex web of selves, each with its own desires, fears, and purposes, pulling you in different directions. This is the paradox of the fractured self. The more we try to understand who we are, the more we come to realize that we may be composed of many different versions of ourselves. We are not, in fact, a singular, cohesive entity, but rather a constellation of fragmented identities that shift depending on time, place, and circumstance. And here's the crux of the paradox. While we experience the world through the lens of this fractured self, we continue to believe in the idea that we are a unified person. Take a moment to reflect on your thoughts and experiences. You might notice that, throughout the day, you inhabit different versions of yourself. In one moment, you might be a professional at work, following a set of rules and expectations that reflect a certain persona. In another, you might be a friend, sharing stories and laughs, behaving in a way that feels distinct from your work identity. Then, at home, you might revert to yet another version of yourself, perhaps the quieter, more introspective self, the one that seeks solitude or connection on a deeper level. You are not a static being, but a dynamic and shifting constellation of roles and behaviors that coalesce to form your identity. Yet, despite these variations, we cling to the idea of a cohesive self. We tell ourselves stories about who we are, create narratives around our actions and desires, and build a sense of continuity that allows us to function in society. But the truth is that this sense of continuity is often a product of self-deception. We prefer to think of ourselves as a single, unchanging entity because it provides comfort and coherence. The paradox lies in the fact that, while we construct this unified sense of self, the reality is that we are constantly shifting, adapting, and evolving. Consider the many ways in which you identify yourself. Your roles as a child, a sibling, a student, a partner, and so on. Each of these identities carries its own set of expectations and behaviors. If you were to meet someone who had known you only in one of these roles, they might have an entirely different perception of you than someone who has known you in another context. In each case, the you that they perceive might feel distinct, even though you may see yourself as the same person across all contexts. This multiplicity of selves is not a flaw, it's a feature of human existence. We are shaped by the circumstances in which we find ourselves, and as a result, we constantly evolve to meet the demands of those circumstances. The most striking manifestation of this paradox is in the realm of memory. As you look back on your life, you might find that the person you were a year ago, or 10 years ago, feels like a completely different person. Your past self may seem distant, like a character in a story you once knew, but can no longer fully relate to. In this way, the fractured self extends backward in time, creating multiple versions of you that no longer exist but that continue to influence who you are today. You are the sum of these past selves, even though they no longer exist in the same way they once did. What's more, this fractured self extends forward as well. The person you will become is not a fixed entity, but a shifting and malleable construct. Your future self will likely be someone vastly different from the person you are now, shaped by the choices you make, the experiences you encounter, and the environment in which you live. Just as you can no longer fully identify with your past self, you may find that the version of yourself in the future seems equally alien, a stranger you will come to know only in time. And yet, this future self is still you. as real as the present, you, and it is shaped by the same ongoing process of fragmentation and recombination. This paradox is not just a psychological one, it extends into the realms of philosophy and metaphysics. Philosophers have long debated the nature of the self. Some argue that the self is an illusion, a convenient fiction created by our brains to help us navigate the world. Others suggest that there is a deeper, unchanging essence at the core of our being, something immutable that remains constant across time. But the paradox of the fractured self suggests that both perspectives may be true. The self we experience is, in fact, an ongoing process of change and reconstruction, a fluid entity that is never truly fixed. And yet, despite this fluidity, we persist in the illusion that we are a single, stable being. Another dimension of this paradox becomes apparent when we examine the role of language in shaping the self. We use words to describe ourselves, to communicate our experiences, and to anchor our identities. But words themselves are limited and imperfect tools for capturing the full complexity of who we are. A single word can never encompass the full depth of our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Language, in this sense, is a tool for constructing a coherent narrative around the fractured self. We string together words to create a sense of unity, even though the reality of our existence is far more fragmented and chaotic. In a sense, language is both the means by which we impose order on the self, and the very thing that obscures the fragmented nature of our existence. The paradox of the fractured self calls into question the very nature of identity. If we are not a single, unchanging entity, then what are we? Are we simply a collection of shifting roles, a patchwork quilt of selves that come together in the form of a human being? Or is there something deeper at work, something that connects these fragmented selves and gives them coherence? Perhaps the answer lies not in seeking a single fixed self, but in accepting that the fractured self is a natural part of the human experience. To be human is to be in a constant state of flux, to exist as a multitude of selves that are always in the process of becoming. The true challenge, then, is not to seek a unified self, but to embrace the complexity and multiplicity of our existence. By doing so, we can begin to understand that we are not one thing, but many things, always in motion, always evolving, always becoming. The act of making choices is fundamental to our experience as human beings. Every day, we are faced with decisions, big and small, that shape the course of our lives. From the mundane, what to eat for breakfast, to the monumental, what career to pursue. The ability to choose is what sets us apart from other beings. But what if, paradoxically, the very act of choosing is an illusion? What if, in fact, we are trapped in an eternal loop of choices that we cannot escape, no matter how hard we try? At first glance, the idea that choice is an illusion might seem absurd. We make choices all the time, don't we? We choose what to wear, where to go, whom to interact with, and how to spend our time. Every action, it seems, stems from a decision we consciously make. But here's the paradox. The more we examine the nature of choice, the more we realize that the choices we make may not be as free as we believe. Consider this. Every decision we make is influenced by a vast network of factors: our past experiences, our upbringing, our biological instincts, the expectations placed on us by society, our personal desires, and so much more. Each choice, then, is not made in a vacuum, but is shaped by an endless web of influences that we may not even be aware of. In other words, our choices are predetermined by an intricate web of prior conditions. And yet, within this web, we still experience the feeling of freedom, as if we are the ones in control. This is the paradox of free will. While we believe ourselves to be free to choose, the truth is that we are caught in a cycle of conditioned responses that make our choices feel inevitable. Even when we think we are making an entirely original decision, we are simply reacting to the complex interplay of factors that have come before. The more we think about the choices we make, the more we realize that the idea of free will may be an illusion, a comforting story we tell ourselves to maintain our sense of agency. Now, let's dig deeper into the eternal loop aspect of this paradox. Imagine that every decision you make is not truly the end of a process, but rather the beginning of another. For example, when you choose what to eat for dinner, that choice leads to another decision, whether to eat in or go out, what ingredients to buy, and so on. One choice leads to the next, and before you know it, you're caught in an endless cycle of decisions. And while each individual decision may feel important, it's only part of a larger, never-ending process that never truly stops. At some point, you may begin to wonder if you ever truly make a final choice. If every choice leads to another, does that mean we are caught in an infinite loop, where every decision is simply the precursor to another set of choices? Are we forever locked in a cycle, never able to reach a point of resolution? The more we reflect on it, the more it seems that we are on a never-ending treadmill of decision-making, with no real way to step off. What's even more unsettling is that this loop is not just about the choices we make, but the choices we don't make. Often, the failure to make a decision is itself a decision to remain passive or indecisive. In this way, inaction becomes just another choice, perpetuating the cycle even further. Every time we avoid a decision, we are still engaging in the same loop, still moving forward in a direction, even if it's not one that we consciously choose. Now, consider the broader implications of this paradox. If every choice leads to another, and every decision we make is influenced by prior conditions, then is there truly any such thing as an original decision? Are we simply going through the motions, reacting to external circumstances, without ever having the freedom to choose something truly new? In this view, our choices are not an expression of free will, but a chain of events that was set in motion long before we ever realized it. What's perhaps even more disturbing is that this paradox can extend not just to the decisions we make in our personal lives, but to the broader trajectory of our existence. Think about it. What if the choices you made in the past, while seemingly individual and independent, were all part of a larger pattern, a path that you were always meant to follow? What if, despite the feeling of freedom, your entire life has been predetermined by a series of events and decisions that led you to where you are now? The decisions you make today might feel like they are within your control, but are they really any more free than the ones you made in the past? In this sense, the paradox of choice becomes a reflection of the broader philosophical question of determinism. If all of our choices are the result of prior causes, then are we truly free? Or are we simply acting out a script written by forces beyond our control? This question has been asked by philosophers for centuries, but it remains unresolved. The paradox of the eternal loop of choice invites us to consider the possibility that, despite our perception of freedom, we are caught in a cycle that we can never escape. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this paradox is the realization that even if our choices are influenced by external factors, and even if we are caught in an eternal loop, we continue to believe in the illusion of freedom. We continue to make choices, to act as if we have control over our lives, and to feel responsible for the outcomes of our decisions. And yet, the more we examine the nature of choice, the more we realize that the loop we are caught in is not one of our own making, but a cycle that stretches back far beyond us. The paradox of the eternal loop of choice forces us to confront the tension between our perception of free will and the reality of determinism. It challenges us to reconsider the very nature of choice itself and to ask whether true freedom is even possible, or whether we are, in fact, destined to be forever, trapped in a cycle of decisions that we cannot break. There's an undeniable complexity to the human mind. It can analyze, contemplate, reason, and reflect, all while being the very tool we use to understand the world around us. We often think of ourselves as self-aware, conscious beings capable of understanding our thoughts, our desires, and our motivations. But here lies the paradox. How can we, as thinking beings, truly know the mind that is doing the thinking? How can the mind, the very instrument through which we explore the world and ourselves, ever fully comprehend itself? At first glance, the idea of the mind not fully knowing itself might seem counterintuitive. After all, we engage in self-reflection, introspection, and analysis regularly. We have a concept of who we are, a sense of our beliefs, emotions, and desires. In some ways, it appears that we know ourselves intimately, but this surface-level understanding may not be the whole truth. To truly know the mind, to fully understand its workings, would require an infinite ability to observe itself from every possible angle, every moment, every thought, and every action. This task is impossible. The mind is inherently limited in its capacity to understand itself, which creates a paradox at the core of self-awareness. Consider the nature of consciousness. Consciousness is often described as the awareness of one's own thoughts, experiences, and existence. But if consciousness is what allows us to be aware of ourselves, how is it that we can be aware of our consciousness? It's as if we are trying to use one tool to examine itself, which creates an infinite regress. To understand consciousness, we must be conscious of it. But being conscious of consciousness requires a level of awareness that seems to elude us. The mind becomes a loop, endlessly trying to catch itself but never quite succeeding. The limitations of introspection only deepen this paradox. We can look inward and analyze our thoughts, but we cannot always access the underlying processes that shape those thoughts. Many of our mental operations happen beneath the surface of conscious awareness. Our subconscious, our automatic reactions, our biases, and our emotions often operate without us fully understanding them. For example, when we think we are making a rational decision, it's easy to overlook the underlying subconscious influences, such as past experiences, cultural conditioning, and emotional responses, which may be driving that decision. In fact, much of what we believe we know about ourselves is actually based on partial truths. We might think we understand why we feel a certain way about something, but in reality, we are only tapping into a fraction of the factors that shape our feelings. Our minds are a vast, complex network of conscious and unconscious elements, and we are only ever scratching the surface. No matter how much we try to reflect, we will never have complete access to the entirety of our mental landscape. This incomplete understanding of ourselves raises the question: if we cannot fully know our own minds, can we ever truly know anything about ourselves at all? This paradox extends beyond the individual to the broader question of human nature. We like to think of ourselves as self-aware, rational creatures. But if we cannot even fully know our own minds, how reliable is our perception of reality? If we cannot even grasp the full extent of our own thoughts and motivations, what can we really know about the world around us? How much of what we believe to be true is shaped by limited or distorted views of ourselves and our environment? The mind's inability to fully comprehend itself also extends to its sense of identity. Who are we, really? We often define ourselves by our memories, our experiences, and the roles we play in life. But our memories are unreliable, constantly being reshaped and edited by our own perceptions and biases. Our sense of identity is fluid, shifting over time as we encounter new experiences and information. How can we claim to truly know ourselves when our sense of self is so malleable? If we can't even pinpoint who we are at any given moment, how can we trust that we truly understand the essence of our being? Moreover, the mind's limitations extend to our understanding of emotions. Emotions are often fleeting and unpredictable, arising from deep within our subconscious. We might feel sadness, joy, anger, or fear, but the origins of these emotions are not always clear. Sometimes we may not even understand why we are feeling a particular way, let alone be able to articulate it. We may try to rationalize our emotions, but in doing so, we risk reducing them to mere logical explanations, ignoring the deeper, often irrational forces at play. Another aspect of the mind's self-ignorance lies in its relationship with the body. We experience our thoughts, feelings, and actions through our physical bodies. Yet the body is a separate system with its own complexities that the mind cannot fully control or understand. For example, the brain may attempt to interpret sensory information from the body, but it is impossible for the mind to fully grasp the intricacies of bodily processes, like the autonomic functions of the nervous system, the hormonal fluctuations that influence our emotions, or the ways in which trauma is stored in the body. The mind might think it understands the body, but it remains unaware of many aspects of its own physical existence. In attempting to understand the mind, we find ourselves confronted with an unsettling truth. The mind is not a perfect, self-contained system. It is, in many ways, a mysterious and enigmatic force, unable to fully comprehend itself. The more we try to analyze our thoughts, our emotions, and our consciousness, the more we realize that there is an infinite depth of complexity that will forever remain beyond our grasp. This paradox forces us to confront the limits of human knowledge and the boundaries of self-awareness. While we may never fully understand our own minds, perhaps the quest for understanding is what truly matters. The attempt to know ourselves, to explore the depths of our consciousness, is an ongoing journey, one that may never have a definitive end, but one that can shape our experience of life. Ultimately, the paradox of the mind that doesn't know itself reveals a profound truth about human existence. We are always both the observer and the observed, trapped in a cycle of self-examination that will never fully yield the answers we seek. In this uncertainty, however, lies the beauty of self-awareness, an ongoing, imperfect process that allows us to keep asking, exploring, and evolving, even if we can never fully know the mind that is doing the asking. The concept of perspective is fundamental to how we experience the world. We view everything from a specific angle, shaped by our physical position, our beliefs, and our personal experiences. In every moment of our lives, we see the world through a particular lens, filtering reality according to what we know and how we feel. Yet, what if this perspective we rely on, the very one that shapes our understanding of reality, doesn't truly exist in the way we think it does? At first glance, the idea that a point of view doesn't exist may seem absurd. After all, it's easy to assume that our perception of the world is a fixed, tangible thing. We stand in a specific spot, look at an object, and from our vantage point, we understand its size, shape, and color. We look at people and form judgments based on their appearance, actions, and words, all filtered through our personal experiences and biases. But this filtering process may obscure the truth about the nature of perspective itself. It implies that our understanding of reality isn't the direct result of an objective truth, but rather a subjective construct, a narrative created by our minds. The paradox arises when we consider the fact that our point of view is never truly fixed or stable. It is constantly shifting, adapting to new information, and evolving with our thoughts, moods, and experiences. The very idea of a perspective is a transient, fluid construct that changes from moment to moment. We may think we have a clear and stable understanding of a situation or an event, but our perspective is always subject to the forces of memory, emotion, and context. This means that the point of view we rely on to navigate the world isn't as reliable or consistent as we might believe. In a way, perspective itself is an illusion. Our brains are wired to process sensory information and create a coherent understanding of the world. But this process is far from objective. Our minds interpret data, fill in gaps, and make judgments based on incomplete or biased information. This subjective processing leads us to believe that our point of view is grounded in reality, when, in fact, it is shaped by a complex web of internal factors that are largely outside of our control. Our experiences, desires, and fears influence how we perceive the world, skewing our perception of events, people, and even ourselves. But it gets deeper. Our perception of the world is not just shaped by internal factors, but by the very structure of our minds. We can never see the world exactly as it is because our senses are limited. Our eyes can only detect a fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum, and our ears are attuned to a narrow range of sound frequencies. Even the way our brains process the information we receive is inherently biased. We see the world in a way that makes sense to us based on our limited sensory input and cognitive abilities, but this is not necessarily an accurate representation of reality. Furthermore, the concept of a fixed point of view suggests that there is a singular, objective reality that exists independently of our perception. However, this assumption begins to crumble when we consider the diversity of human experience. People from different cultures, backgrounds, and upbringings perceive the same event in vastly different ways. A single story can be told from multiple perspectives, each one colored by the unique experiences and biases of the storyteller. What we see and understand as real is shaped by our individual points of view, and these points of view are, in turn, influenced by the context in which we find ourselves. This paradox challenges the idea of objectivity itself. If reality is experienced through subjective points of view, then how can we ever claim to have an objective understanding of the world? How can we know what is truly real if our perceptions are so inherently skewed by our internal biases and limited senses? In this sense, perspective itself becomes a veil, distorting the world we think we understand and turning it into something much more fluid and elusive. If we acknowledge that our point of view is constantly shifting, we begin to confront the unsettling idea that it may not exist in the way we think it does. There is no fixed vantage point from which we can view the world objectively. Our perception is always changing, influenced by external factors like our environment and internal factors like our emotions and memories. We can never truly escape the confines of our subjective experience, no matter how hard we try to analyze or rationalize it. Perhaps the most profound aspect of this paradox is that it challenges our sense of self. We often think of our identity as a fixed entity, shaped by our memories, our actions, and our thoughts. We see ourselves from a certain point of view, and this perspective forms the basis of our understanding of who we are. But what happens when we realize that this self-image is as fluid and shifting as any other perspective? If our point of view is not fixed, then perhaps our sense of self is not fixed either. The I that we believe to be constant and stable may, in reality, be a transient, ever-changing construct, shaped by the same processes that shape our view of the world. This leads to an unsettling realization. If our point of view doesn't truly exist in a fixed or stable sense, then what does it mean to know something? If we cannot trust our own perception of the world, can we ever truly know anything? Every fact we believe to be true, every piece of knowledge we acquire, is colored by the lens through which we view it. There is no objective standpoint from which we can access truth, only a multitude of shifting perspectives, each offering a different version of reality. Ultimately, the paradox of the point of view that doesn't exist invites us to reconsider the nature of knowledge, perception, and reality itself. It forces us to confront the limitations of our minds and the fluidity of our experience. In the absence of a fixed vantage point, we are left to navigate a world that is constantly changing, constantly shifting, and constantly slipping beyond our grasp. And yet, it is this very uncertainty that makes the quest for understanding so deeply human. We may never fully know the world or ourselves, but it is the attempt to see, to understand, and to make sense of our ever-shifting perspective that defines our existence. There are truths that exist beyond the reach of language. These are the truths that feel almost tangible, as though you could reach out and grasp them. But the moment you try to articulate them, they slip away, as elusive as smoke. They live in the space between thoughts, in the silence that underlies all communication, where words fail to encapsulate the depth of understanding that we experience. These truths can be deeply personal or universally profound, but they all share a singular, paradoxical quality. They are only fully known in the absence of words. We often think of language as a tool for communicating the truth. It is through words that we convey ideas, express emotions, and share knowledge with others. And yet, there are moments in life where language feels insufficient, even inadequate. Think of the feeling you get when you're overwhelmed by the beauty of nature, or when you're struck by an insight that changes the way you see the world. In those moments, you might find yourself at a loss for words. The truth of the experience is so deep, so immediate, that it seems to transcend the limits of language. The only way to fully understand it is to experience it firsthand, and even then, the words we use to describe it always seem to fall short. This creates a strange paradox. The more profound the truth, the harder it is to express. The deeper the insight, the more elusive the words. It's as if the truth itself resists being pinned down by language, slipping away as soon as we attempt to capture it in the confines of vocabulary and syntax. Some truths are simply too complex, too vast, or too subtle to be fully encapsulated in human language. We might know them, we might feel them, but we cannot speak them in a way that does them justice. This paradox becomes even more pronounced when we try to share these ineffable truths with others. We've all had moments when we've struggled to explain something, a deep emotion, an experience of wonder, or a sudden realization, and no matter how hard we try, the words just don't come out right. We end up grasping at the edges of the truth, attempting to articulate something that feels just beyond our reach. And while others may try to understand, they too are limited by the constraints of language. The truth remains in the space between us, unspoken and often misunderstood. It's not just that language is imperfect, it's that the truths we're trying to express are themselves beyond the realm of words. These truths are not bound by the structures of language. They are rooted in a deeper level of experience, one that cannot be fully conveyed through verbal or written communication. It's the difference between knowing something intellectually and knowing it viscerally, in the bones, in the gut. Sometimes words can't carry the weight of the experience itself. This paradox also challenges the way we think about communication. We often take for granted that language is the primary means by which we understand one another. But what happens when we recognize that some of the most important truths cannot be spoken at all? This doesn't mean that communication is useless. Rather, it suggests that there is an entire dimension of human experience that lies beyond the reach of language. This dimension exists in the unspoken, in the pauses between words, in the gestures and glances that convey more than any sentence could. Think about how often we understand each other without saying anything at all. A shared glance, a knowing, silence, a simple touch. These forms of communication can often convey more meaning than 1,000 words. This raises the question: if there are truths that can't be expressed through words, how do we come to know them? How do we communicate them to others? The answer may lie in the very process of trying to speak the unspeakable. In our attempts to articulate the inexpressible, we may discover a deeper connection to the truth itself, a truth that can never be fully captured in language, but can still be deeply felt. At the heart of this paradox is the idea that truth is not something that can be neatly packaged and presented through language. Truth is not a statement to be proven, but an experience to be lived. It's the silent understanding that passes between two people who have shared a moment of deep connection. It's the realization that no matter how many words we use, they can never fully encompass the complexity of the world we live in. There is always something left unsaid, something beyond our comprehension, and that is what makes the pursuit of truth so endlessly fascinating. The more we seek to understand, the more we are confronted with the limits of our understanding. In some ways, this paradox points to a profound truth about the nature of human existence itself. We are all, in some sense, bound by the limitations of our own minds and our own perceptions. The world we experience is always mediated by our senses, our thoughts, and our language, and there will always be aspects of reality that lie beyond our grasp. Yet this very limitation is what drives us forward. It's the search for understanding, the attempt to speak the unspeakable, that propels us to grow and evolve as individuals and as a species. Ultimately, the paradox of the truth that cannot be spoken challenges us to embrace the mystery of life. It asks us to let go of the need to define everything, to accept that there are things that cannot be put into words and still be valid. It asks us to recognize that some of the most profound truths are not found in the answers we give, but in the questions we ask, in the silences we share, and in the experiences we live. As we navigate the complexities of life, we must learn to live with the tension of this paradox, understanding that some truths are too deep to speak and yet too powerful to ignore. The beauty of these unspeakable truths is that they connect us to something larger than ourselves, something beyond language, beyond explanation. In this way, the truth that cannot be spoken is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced as a reminder of the vastness of the world and the depth of our own experience. As we bring this exploration of paradoxes to a close, we find ourselves once again standing at the edge of the unknown, gazing into the abyss of understanding. These paradoxes, strange and confounding as they are, do not seek to provide answers as much as they invite us into deeper reflection. They challenge the way we think, the way we perceive, and the way we engage with the world around us. They remind us that the most profound truths often exist not in certainty, but in ambiguity. They invite us to embrace the mystery, to live in the tension between what we know and what we cannot know. Each paradox explored here highlights a fundamental aspect of our existence. Our limitations, our desires, our struggles with meaning, and our ceaseless quest for understanding, whether it is the illusion of time, the enigma of the self, or the truths that language cannot express, these paradoxes reflect the complexity of human thought and the beauty of the unknown. In the end, it is this very uncertainty that makes life so intriguing, so rich with possibility. As you reflect on the paradoxes we've delved into, remember that they are not puzzles to be solved, but doors to be opened. Each one offers a glimpse into a deeper dimension of existence, encouraging us to keep questioning, to keep seeking, and to never settle for simple answers. The mysteries of the universe are vast, and they are ours to explore, not with the expectation of mastering them, but with the humility of those who understand that the journey itself holds more value than any destination. In embracing the paradox, we come closer to understanding the paradox of our own existence, an existence that cannot be fully defined, explained, or captured, but one that continues to unfold in all its complexity and wonder. And as you carry these thoughts with you, let them serve as a reminder. Sometimes, the most powerful truths are the ones that remain just beyond our grasp, urging us to reach further, to question deeper, and to live fully in the mystery of it all. Thank you for joining this journey through the mind-bending paradoxes that challenge our perceptions. Remember, the world is full of mysteries that are waiting to be explored. Keep questioning, keep seeking, and perhaps one day you'll uncover more of the elusive truths that lie just beyond the reach of our understanding. If you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with others who are equally curious about the wonders of the universe.